Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CSM Mastermind. My name is Andrew Marks, co-founder of Success Hacker and our Success Coaching Training Program. We're back for our monthly live webcast today, discussing how to effectively handle customer objections. This free learning event is being hosted by Success Coaching, the team that brought you the first accredited customer success professional development training program. If you're looking to earn your first customer success certification, check out our launch product. We're also excited to announce that we've adjusted the delivery of our instructor-led CSM Level 1 certification program to be fully virtual and have space remaining in our 3-day bootcamp next week. The bootcamp runs Monday through Wednesday from 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific time. And as part of our COVID-19 relief effort, we're offering a 50% discount on this bootcamp. Use coupon code CSMM-50. Thanks, Ashley, for putting that out. She'll also add that coupon code to the chat window. Find more about our training and coaching offerings at successcoaching.co. Now, for those of you who haven't participated in one of these events before, this is a live and unscripted discussion where we dig into a single topic relevant to customer success. Regardless of the company you work for, the details of your customer-facing role, or the size of the customers you deal with, we pick topics that are going to be practical and useful to you. The schedule for our upcoming CSM Mastermind events and our public training courses can be found at successcoaching.co under the events calendar tab, so please check that out. There's a lot of thought leadership out there, along with a lot of theories about how to deliver customer success. This series allows us to focus on the practical and give you real-world advice, tips, techniques, and shared experiences from those out in the wild that are practicing customer success on a daily basis. To do that, we invite 3 participants from the customer success community to join me for a roundtable discussion. These are people that have been recommended to us as being great at their craft, and we ask them to share their experiences and perspectives. We will be taking questions later on during the webcast, so please use that Q&A functionality found at the bottom of your screen to ask a question. I'm very excited to welcome our panel for today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Let's get started with Marta. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Marta Montero. I'm the manager of the customer success team at eCompliance. We're in the health and safety software space, and we help frontline participants really get involved with their own health and safety program. And we're all about having a proactive health and safety culture. Right now with COVID-19, we're working with a lot of essential businesses. So it's a really interesting time to be a CSM at eCompliance.
I would think so. I would think you're very busy right now.
We are, yes.
Yes, of course. Thanks, Marta. I appreciate you spending some time with us today. Laura, you're up.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Laurel Awara. I lead the SoftBank Robotics customer success team here in San Francisco. We focus on autonomous solutions. So right now, just like Marta mentioned, our clients are in the essential business. We specialize right now in a commercial autonomous vacuum that it's actually cleaning oftentimes the carpeted spaces that have been actually impacted by those that have gotten COVID. So it's a very interesting time, but more important, we're really interested in the space of how autonomous solutions can actually help the humans, the great people that are doing great work, be more successful and efficient in their day-to-day jobs.
Excellent. So cool.
Thank you.
You get to work with robots.
Exactly.
Thanks, Laura. And last but not least, Alex.
Everybody, I'm Alex Glick. I'm a customer success manager at Sales Loft here in Atlanta. We are the #1 sales engagement platform, allowing reps, AEs, customer success managers, people all across the organization engage personally and authentically with their prospects. I've been at the company for the last 15 or so months. Great place to be, and really, really excited to be on the panel today. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for making some time. So let's get to the topic for today. We're in the business of keeping our customers successful. We like to keep our customers happy. However, customer objections are inevitable, right? So how do you deal with unhappy customers? How do you view their objections? How do you ensure that your customers are feeling heard while voicing their concerns? And more importantly, how do you turn that into something positive for your customer as well as your own organization? Who wants to get us started?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. And there's a lot to that question, and I love it. First, I think when I start thinking about objections, I'm thinking of things that the feeling of disapproval or it's some kind of opposition to an existing motion that you're going through. Maybe it's from poor expectation setting. Maybe it's just a simple misunderstanding. But regardless of the scenario, it's something that really requires empathy to start and active listening as well. I think there's no better way to quickly build a relationship with your client than when you're going through the weeds together, right? When there's an objection or some kind of trial or tribulation that you're going through, this is an opportunity to really showcase as a CSM that we're in this together and this is truly a team. And that starts with level setting, hearing them out, understanding truly what the issue is, right? The initial objection may be one thing, but that fundamentally might not really be the root cause of that objection. So asking those open-ended questions, digging deeper and truly listening with that side of empathy to ensure that they know that we're in this together is a huge thing for me when I'm dealing with objection handling.
Yeah, I full-heartedly agree with Alex. The only thing I would add to that is that as CSMs, we are working as a team with the rest of the organization. And so it's really important to enable not just yourself and your CSM team to be listening actively, but also enable the rest of the organization to follow suit and be a part of that objection handling and part of the solution. So some techniques that you can do, we very recently implemented this at eCompliance, but we have a code red meeting. So what that is we have that once a week and the coaches and the onboarding team come to that meeting and they talk about some red flags that they're seeing, some objections that they have come across. And to Alex's point, an objection can look in very many different ways. It can have many different facets, but as long as we come together and we have an action plan of what it is what that objection truly is and what the next steps are that we have to take, a lot of the times we have to bring in the product team or we have to bring in the support team or maybe even finance. But having the customer feel that it's not just you who's taking on that objection, but it's the entire organization, that goes light years ahead in terms of building a relationship with them and building good faith with them.
The last thing I'll add is really around tactics. So how does someone feel heard? And so experts say it takes roughly around 4 to 5 questions to really uncover the pain or nature of an objection. So step 1, Alex already alluded to that. Step 2, I think it's really important then to recap what someone said and make sure you're both on the same page of the actual pain point and then the actual impact of that pain point is having not only on the individual, but also on the organization and them hitting their ROI targets with your product. And then the third thing is putting a time frame for response. So oftentimes, especially in the tech industry, it's very hard to solve some of these problems. Like Marta alluded to, you need to get in product, you need to get in customer care, you're potentially going to global services. It can take a long time frame to potentially get to that resolution. So by sending an email, some sort of confirmation that recaps what was stated, then also says your updated time frame of when you actually are going to get an update to them, even if it's an answer of this isn't something that isn't happening right yet, or this is something that's going to happen at a later time frame. This is going to get an answer in a week. All of these things can let someone know that they've been heard, the company's taking it seriously, and then you as their partner are taking it seriously. And it helps make sure that both parties are transparent and on the same page.
Yeah, I think one last thing I want to add to that is if there's one thing that you can find that you, even if it's something small, and you can commit to solving that one thing, maybe it's getting a commitment, getting an answer, just that little small thing, and you commit to getting it done. And of course, you need to follow through in getting it done within that particular time frame. That one little thing, when you get it done, it gives that person that you're committing to, that makes them feel better, makes them feel like, okay, I'm being heard, and this person is indeed, even though it may be something, a small token, it's following through on that commitment that's key.
Couldn't agree more.
So lots of empathy, lots of active listening, lots of open-ended questions. are really core. The other thing, that I think, and I'd like y'all to weigh in on this is, you're just one piece of all of the stuff that is layered on top of whatever this person is dealing with, that could result in them maybe complaining or objecting to something that maybe somebody else wouldn't necessarily object to. So I think it's important that perspective is, maintaining that perspective is important as well.
Yeah, I definitely couldn't agree more. I think part of empathy is understanding when someone just needs to get everything out there. And another really important part is understanding when, to your point, you're just a part of the issues that they're facing, and when you are the issue that they're facing. So going back to the tactics, and Laura, I love that you're bringing in tactical things that we can do, because I really think that's the intention of a panel like this. One thing I always let a customer do when we're facing an objection is I just sit there and I take notes, and I let them listen, or I let them just talk for as long as they want. And a lot of the times they'll be saying the same thing over and over again, but every time they say that, you are learning something a little bit different. The first time they're talking about the objection, they might be focusing on how it's impacting them. Then the second time they might be focusing on how it's impacting their team. And so just alone by letting them go on and on and on, you're already going to be learning so much more. And on the flip side of that, you're also showing that you are not there to cut them off or just to tell them this will be fixed and that's it. You're honestly there to listen and understand and see the impact that this is having. So just letting them talk is a huge tactic that I definitely employ and get my team to employ as well.
One of the things, just to jump in on that, I love about customer success is that we aren't measured by a reactive metric. We're not looking at how quick can we get them off the phone, how quick can we get them, their fastest answer. We're actually supposed to collect the information and get that to the product team, get that to the executive leadership, the CEO, whomever in the organization. And so it is actually our opportunity to listen. If it takes an hour, and it does mean getting on the phone. We do a lot in the tech touch world, which means we're using technology to communicate with our customers and collect that feedback. But the one sweet spot, especially with our bigger customers, the enterprise customers, how can we pick up the phone, collect all of their needs, requirements, pain points, and summarize that and get that to the other teams?
This is honestly why I got into customer success, right? Like, I was in the sales world for a long time, but being the voice of a customer is what's so exciting about this role. There's no other position in a company where you can directly get feedback at any point in time on your platform or your product or capabilities or lack thereof, and immediately articulate that to the people that need to hear it the most, which is either product or it's your executive leadership team or whomever, like Laura mentioned. So this is fundamentally why I got into success, where you can be that voice for your customer, problem solve with them, get through it together. But kind of summing up what Laura and Marta was saying, like, you really are the voice of the customer. There's got to be a strategy in place where you're implementing these tactics and leveraging other people on your team and in your organization to help them see success. And the quicker you learn that you can't do it all on your own, I think the better off a CSM you'll be. But yeah, it does. It takes an army at times.
Yeah, and that voice to the customer comment, very, very, very important, right? I think it's important that you're not just the voice of the customer behind the scenes, but that you're expressing to the customer that you're their voice, and that way what you're doing is you're pulling the customer closer to you and making them part of the solution to a problem, whether it's just their problem or it's a problem that affects a broad swath of your customer base.
Andrew, one thing I want to jump in here is I found this stat. This was a great opportunity to do some research on objection handling. This digital agency, Quora, studied this subject and found that 73% of consumers leave bad reviews for that reason, to actually ensure future customers have a better experience. And I thought that was an interesting research topic in itself. But if clients can feel that not only they're having a better experience, but those also in the industry, even though they're competitors, even though they're all trying to get the best outcome from the product that they're using and implementing. So I think that's a really interesting angle of why people would object and complain.
Well, the customers who are objecting and complaining are the ones that they're doing that because they want you to make things better, right?
Exactly.
They want you to fix things. I think it's there. I read something where, 20% or less of folks that have an issue with you actually complain.
Exactly.
It says, is it something like that? 6 out of 10, 8 out of 10, something like that? A really relatively small percentage.
There's no scarier moment than when your client goes ghost on you, right? And just doesn't respond to anything. Yeah. Like if they are raising objections and they're raising feedback, they still care and you still have a leg to stand on. That moment where they don't object anymore, where it's like, okay, we got a way bigger problem to address.
Sorry, go ahead, Marta.
I was just going to say, Alex, I couldn't agree with you more. I recently did quite a bit of research into NPS, which I think correlates quite well with this. And one thing I found that was really interesting is that the customers who don't respond, even if you have a very negative NPS score, that's still a lot better than having an NPS score where your response rate is really low. And out of those customers who don't respond, they're 8 to 10 times more likely to churn. So going back to what I think all of us were saying is, even if there are objections and, when you're dealing with objection after objection after objection, you might be sitting there thinking, oh my God, there is no way that I'm going to be able to have a positive relationship with this customer. But as long as those objections are being spoken about and you are working towards solving them, you are in a much better position at helping them solve their business problems and their outcomes than if that customer isn't saying anything or is just giving one-word answers or not even responding to your NPS score or NPS survey.
Yeah, the non-respondence to the NPS survey is can be a huge red flag. I 100% agree with you, but it's fine. I was going to talk about NPS as well. One of the things that I love about NPS, about the simplicity of NPS, right? How would you rate us and why? A single question really is the requirement. Creates an opportunity for us to get more responses. I was talking to a client yesterday about how their customer sat survey was only getting 2% response rates, but they had 10 questions and then another 50 behind it if the customer asked if the customer was interested, if the customer wanted to opt in. Whereas their NPS surveys, you typically should be getting 25-30% response rates, right? Mm-hmm. And I'd rather get a response that is indicative of where my customer is at with one question than no responses because I got 10 questions. I believe I read somewhere every question you add to a survey reduces your response rate by 12.5%. That's pretty significant.
It's comparable in the sales world too, like coming from working with sales teams and reps on a daily basis and watching what their outbound motion looks like. The more questions they throw in their emails, the less the response rates, the lower the response rate is across the board. And generally it's one question or less is your best response rate. The second you do 2 and higher, you're seeing a depreciating return. It's the same thing with success, right? Like it's the exact same play. I'm sending you an email with 15 questions on it. That's overwhelming as hell. Like I don't even know what's the priority of the email anymore. What's the intention? So yeah, 100% agree.
Now, of course, that doesn't include, we're not talking about that within the frame, within the concept of the open-ended questions that you're having with a customer who's objective, who's got an issue, right? Because it's a question, an open-ended question that you get a response from that hopefully leads to another open-ended question, and you begin this back and forth in this conversation with a customer. That's good. That's what we want. We want that to happen.
Yeah, it's on the emails where you see the issues, right? Like when you're having a conversation, it's a whole lot different.
Yeah, exactly. So can any of you share a time, a scenario where you effectively handled a customer objection You're able to take in that objection and handle the situation. Anybody have an example, specific example that they want to throw out there?
I can jump in.
Sure.
So in the world of robotics, and we joked about this in the planning of this, robotics have gotten a really fantastic reputation due to Hollywood, due to just a long-term belief that technology and robots will have such a big role. I mean, the Jetsons set the path forward in animation. So oftentimes the expectation setting for robotics is really important. And one of the things that oftentimes happens is people want technology to be smarter than it is, but they don't want to give up privacy. So that's actually one of the best ways that I communicate is that one of the questions we would get asked a lot about is navigation with our humanoid robot with Pepper. For navigation to work, it actually has to have the ability to have a deep set of technology to be able to understand the space, manage the impact of human behavior, and then that whole study is a complicated itself. And so we actually had it restricted in the US for a very good reason. It's also a legal protection. So one of the things that I always do is use an analogy. So to wrap this up really quick is one of the biggest complaints for Siri, Google Assistant, all these technologies is that, oh, Siri can't understand me, or Google Assistant, any of them. A virtual assistant can't understand me, number one. Number two, it doesn't know the right answer. It's not that helpful. Well, to actually do that, it needs a very large data set of information. But the number one complaint is I'm turning off my assistant because it's listening. So we don't want to sacrifice our privacy to make a product smarter, but we also want it to be smarter. And that's the same thing that is in my role with robotics is that if I want the vacuum to identify water and liquid, that technology can totally exist, but then you're putting on cameras every place that robot goes. So it's a really fun actual conversation to talk through. Here's what you're asking for, and then here's the technology to achieve that. And let's talk about, the year-long process or 2 years to get that security approvals done and all of that. So it's that's the best way I handle it is through analogy storytelling and also talking the risks for what they're asking for.
I thought talking to salespeople was fun. That sounds like a blast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I get it. You want it to do what you want it to do what you want it to do. Well, it's got to learn, right? Yeah. It's not like we press a button and go, okay, go, deal with water, it's got to actually learn about that stuff. So cool.
Yeah, I love that, Laura. And just to jump in, I think one tactic I use quite a bit, I think as CSMs, we're sometimes afraid to manage back with the customer. We're afraid of saying no or saying that won't be done or saying, this is very much pie in the sky thinking. And not to say we should be saying it that directly, but there are tactics that we can employ to be managing back. So one example I have for myself with a customer who was objection after objection after objection, I actually had them come in for 2 days and we sat down and we wrote out every single objection that they had. What came out of that, I also involved the product team. I had our VP of customer success sit in on that meeting as well. But what came out of that is that we actually started grouping together their objections. And we realized that they were really themed around 3 things and 3 general product issues. And from there, I had him actually go back and say, okay, out of this list of 50 plus objections that we came up with over the last 2 days, what are your top 5? And so again, challenging him to think about what is the most important to help him achieve his business outcome and help solve the problems that he was trying to solve. So that managing back and getting them to think about what their objections are and the priority is another really important tactic, along with storytelling and analogies that I've found to be really successful.
One other strategy that I've used in the past, especially in a situation where you get a unreasonable objection, is just simply repeating it back to the individual. So you want me to do what with what, right? It just because people's, when people are really frazzled, when they're totally spun up, they're just making things up as they go sometimes, right? So when you practice active listening and you shut up and you listen, and then you repeat back what you believe you heard, and that individual with the unreasonable ask or question or issue hears that coming back at them, they tend to go, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, that's not really what I was saying. And you give them the opportunity to adjust, to correct, and to kind of really think about what and how they asked or stated the issue.
Yeah, I'm big on the data side too. Like I both Laura and Marta bring up really good points, and I love the especially on the absurd questions, right? The repositioning, right? I talk to salespeople all the time, and some salespeople are the most genuinely kind human beings you'll ever meet, and then there's those other salespeople that you've dealt with before, and you kind of know the gist, and there's a reputation for it. I'm big on data, right? Like if there is an opinion that and a belief and an objection to a certain style of outbound, it's usually a positioning of, okay, let's look at the data and see how your process has worked. And if it hasn't worked well, I have some data that proves that this is a better play. And generally speaking, when you put data in front of salespeople or like those types of personalities, it's very quick to be like, okay, I will give this a shot and fall back. I think if you have enough data to support a move or a play, it's pretty easy to position that objection as here's a new alternative for us.
I always think it's important that if you can remove the the passion from the ask, from the issue, and just stick with the data itself. It makes it a lot easier when you're trying to address the problem. So we got some questions. So I thought we'd run through some questions from the audience. And once again, there's a Q&A button down there at the bottom of your screen, probably about right here where my finger is. Hit that Q&A button and ask or upvote a question. The first one comes from Daniel, and he's got 6 upvotes, so it's a popular one. Do you think we must or should provide a solution or answer for every single objection coming from our customers, or is there any type of objection that is just not worth spending resources to dive into, and especially if there's not a lot we can do about that particular objection? Anybody?
I'm happy to. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Alex. Go ahead.
No, and forgive me. I listen. There are times and place to be the I can answer everything for you at once. I think Marta alluded to it on one of her points, which was, here are 50 objections, and we can probably bucket them into 3. So I think if you are on top of it and really listening to what the complaints and the challenges and objections are of the client, there's an opportunity to bucket a lot of those challenges and give a 50 objection response into 3 different buckets, right? I think that's an opportunity there. I also think you really need to know your customer, right? Like if you don't know the personality that your customer is, and they're fine with just venting and you giving a couple of answers here to suffice, right? And I don't want to say pacify, but at least get them through, that's fine. But if you have a person who is very much like, I need this and I need this and I need this, and a response for all of them, you got to know that. And if you don't, then it's really, really tough to read the room and what your expectation should be. But generally speaking, I really do. I feel like what Marta said earlier is so true. Just you can bucket a lot of these responses and get further that way.
Just to add to this, I think there's a couple of things to consider. Number one is, since I'm in the world of a very product-heavy product towards success, I should say, and there's a aggressive roadmap of what the technology is expected to do in the next coming years. I do think being aligned with product and knowing what your product isn't going to deliver and really being clear with your customers, even if that expectation was set from sales, having that honest conversation quickly, it's going to protect you long-term and also set the right expectations for that customer. And honestly, if the customer, 2 other thoughts on that is that if the customer is a customer that is eating into the support costs of your business and you're never going to be able to get them to success, I think that once again, that conversation early on allows you both to make a decision that if that customer needs to churn, unfortunately, might be the best interest for both parties for their success and overall goals, because that in the end is eating up time to support that customer and then the resources internally. And then additionally, at scale, it's not achievable. When you have thousands of customers, there's no way for you to, from scale standpoint, answer everyone specifically individually oftentimes. So that's where packaging, you'll start seeing trends in people's asks and making sure that if you do have an answer, getting that answer set and that's delivered the same to all customers, getting ahead of proactively talking about, okay, here are some things that are coming down the pipeline. Here are some questions, here's some tips, having communication prepared in advance of that, and then also getting that to the sales. And then the last thing I would say is that how do you prioritize feedback? I am really interested in client advisory boards and things of that nature to help prioritize the feedback you're getting. So you're centralizing the feedback from parties that represent your company. And so that can be also a way to focus your energy towards the top things you need to be prioritizing as a company.
That makes sense. Marta, you want to add anything else on this, or before we go on to the next question?
I think the only thing I would add to that, and I completely agree with both Alex and Laura, is again, not being afraid of saying no and pushing back to the customer. And in this case, I always employ the no but tactic, where it is extremely important to set that boundary. If you're just saying, oh, I don't know, you're just going to come up against those objections yet again, and you're going to find yourself in the same spot. But if you say, no, but I want what's best for you, let me work with the team and come up with a solution that's going to help you in the long run, we'll get through this. You've built that rapport, you've addressed that objection, and you've also nipped it in the bud where it's not going to come back down the line.
Yeah, so I love the no but technique. It's actually a negotiation technique as well. The one word of caution that I have for everybody is if you say no, make sure that that's a firm no. Right? If the customer's asking you for something and you say no, we can't do that, you can't go back on that. You can't your boss, you can't reverse course, because if you do, then your customers are going to say, maybe if I push a little harder, and they'll continue to push. Right? So, okay. Great. Thank you. Next question is from Emma. I love the name Emma. Emma, it's my daughter's name. How do you build empathy over email? In my experience, in some cases, customers actually do not want to talk and have that conversation face-to-face or over Zoom.
Can I take this? Because I love this question.
Sure.
So this is something that we see a lot, especially at Sales Loft, is people don't want to pick up the phones, right? People don't respond back to unknown emails. How do I get in the inbox and how do I get a response? It's something that we've seen statistically over and over and over kill it is video. And so we have a partnership with Vidyard in our platform. A lot of people use Vidyard. There's Videolicious. There's a lot of video platforms out there that you can use. And before every intro call, every time I get a new account, CSM transitions, anything like that, my first play is sending a video. It allows me, one, to not have to write out an email. Two, it allows me to put some soul and personality behind the content. And three, puts a face to the name. So I'd say the exact same play here. While it's not like an easy transition, if there is an objection or a challenge or a shortcoming in the platform or anything else, I cannot tell you how many times I've had my VP stand next to me as we do a video for a client and say, we're in this together. We hear you. We know where the gaps are. We're working on it. You're not alone, right? Like it's one of those plays. I think video is so crucial in today's outbound motion for building a rapport and getting responses. And generally speaking, you can get a meeting after a video. It's a lot easier to do because you've put that personality and that true empathetic feeling behind the content and the messaging.
So just to be clear, instead of writing some drawn out email, you guys are recording a video, providing a link, I would assume. And so if somebody gets that email, they click on that link and they're here, they're seeing you, which I love the idea of that. We're huge fans of video. We use Zoom all the time for meetings, for these things, for our trainings, things like that. I love it. Now, I also think, though, there are ways in which you can write emails and express empathy.
Absolutely.
Right? There are definitely techniques and some approaches that you can take, and it just requires you to really think through how do I express that empathy in writing.
A big part of that is knowing your audience, right? The more that you know who the person is at the end of that email chain or what have you, the more personalized you can be in the way that you're writing that email. One thing that one of my CSMs was talking about earlier today, and I love, was she wasn't getting too far with a customer. She started researching them on LinkedIn and found a number of important personal information, not super personal, but just what's happening with the business that she's now using to talk to them about. And so using those nuggets of information that you can find outside of the email, outside of the conversation, but bringing that into the email and try and get a call goes a really long way.
Yeah, and Max here actually has a question that dovetails nicely into the last one, which is, with COVID-19, more and more conversations are happening over email and not phone calls or in person. So how do you handle that in-depth, complicated, and difficult conversations via email? And personally, I think you gotta throw something out there to entice them to get on a call with you, right? I mean, it's if it's really complicated, if it's really in depth, it's really hard to do that via email.
And I think you just pick up the phone. I don't know about your businesses, but in my case, picking up the cell phone and trying them, and if you can catch them at the right time, of course you always. But I think there's nothing wrong of going that route. Not everyone might agree, but in my business, people have 20 to 30 years of experience. They're in cleaning services, and if I can catch them for 2 minutes, I'm typically more successful than them going through the email channels. So I think it's, how does your client communicate? Because if they would pick up SMS texting, if they would jump, there's other ways besides email that I think you need to know what your clients are comfortable with, like Marta said.
What's the value prop, right? What's the reason to get on the call? If I can give you a nugget of like, here's how we start this conversation over email, that's fine. But we're never going to get you to where you need to be unless we hop on a call and discuss. The other thing about it right now, and I see it's specific to COVID, more people are by their phone right now than they ever were before, right? Like, you're not in a different conference room. You're not in the call. You are home by your phone. And a lot of that stuff is passing through to your cell phone. So if you have a number, this is your time, bud. Like, I mean, this is statistically speaking, there's a lot of data that supports now. If you can address the elephant in the room and you can make a phone call, people are by their phones. Again, though, if it is an in-depth, tricky objection or challenge, you're never going to get it done over email, or it's going to require 15 email threads. Like, it's just not worth it. You got to give them some value to entice them, like Andrew said, to get on the call.
And if you can get them live, if they even agree to a call, I always recommend, well, if you got something like a Zoom or a GoToMeeting or what have you, you send them a link, along with a dial-in, and you show up with your camera on, and they're more likely to turn theirs on. And then you could have that face-to-face conversation, and those face-to-face conversations are so important. And I think you're going to see, especially with what's happening now, because we're all in this situation. This isn't some isolated problem. We're all in this situation. Everybody's working from home. I think what you're going to see are more and more people kind of adopting this. Hey, you know what? This virtual thing, this is the way things are going to be for the foreseeable future. I talked to a client yesterday who we had to cancel training for them because we couldn't do it in person, of course. And they were very hesitant about doing the virtual instructor-led training, but they've come now over the last few weeks to the conclusion that, hey, that's the way things are going to be for the foreseeable future. So we have to adopt. We have to adapt. So,
can I just add one thing?
Sure,
that this all sparked is, this is a chance to actually be proactive. You are one of maybe 50 problems people are dealing with. And if you actually have a solution, I did have a customer come back to me recently and said, I can't thank you enough for getting this off my plate. And it was a billing issue. It was nothing to do on the product side. And so sometimes the easy wins are really available to us at a time when people are very stressed and have a lot on their plate.
And once again, those easy wins, those little things, right? That little, yeah, I will get this straightened out. Even if they have a long list of issues, that little, the one that you know you can handle by making a phone call, sending an email to somebody internally, right? Those things, those little nuggets, every little one of those things, they build up. They give you credit to this person. They're like, okay, this person really does, really can help me. It's so this is where you can take a negative situation and use it as something that's beneficial for both the customer, you're solving that problem, but also for you and your company, because you're building that trusted advisor relationship, right? Every one of those problems that you solve for a customer is not a bad thing. It's a good thing because you're solving things and you're building up that credibility with a customer. Caitlin asks, at what point should you be providing an NPS survey? After every interaction, any recommendation on NPS options? I actually just talked about this yesterday with you can tell we've been busy. There's three types of NPS scores. Okay. There's your transactional NPS. So after a support call, after your onboarding is complete, what have you. Then there is your relationship NPS, which is what people, I think, associate mostly, right? So, based off of your experience with a company, would you recommend us? And then, of course, there's a competitive NPS, which is typically done by a third party. But most of the time, people are either doing transactional NPSs or they're doing relationship NPSs. I personally am a fan of, if you're just getting started in NPS, you survey everybody at once to put a stake in the ground, figure out what your NPS score is. But you also need to take into consideration where a customer is in their customer journey. So we believe in this kind of continuous NPS scoring or NPS surveying using products like Ask Nicely or I think of some of the other products out there that are either email-based or in product. Any of the three of you have a take on that, a perspective on that?
Yeah, I can jump in since I had previously talked about NPS and it's something I'm passionate about. I completely agree with you. It really depends on where your customers are along the journey and also depending on who your key contact types are as well. For us, for a really long time, we were doing in-app NPS to our power users. And what you get out of that is a little bit different than what you would get if you're doing an email NPS to your economic buyer or your champions. And so I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer to that. You really have to understand your own business. And before getting there, you want to understand what you're trying to get out of the NPS. Is this something that you do want to use as a true north metric? Or is this something that's supplemental to additional metrics and KPIs that you might have as your organization? How able are you to respond to negative and detractor NPS scores? Because that's also really important. For us, our product team actually owns the NPS score overall. So that's another factor, is who owns it? Is it marketing? Is it CS? Is it product? So all of that is going to affect your answer. But I completely agree with you. When you're starting out, you want to just get a lay of the land. And then from there, you want to break it down and answer all these questions that I just mentioned.
And Marty, you brought up a really good point there. I think it's really important. It goes beyond just running the NPS survey. You need to have a plan on what you're going to do with the information, because you need to close the loop with the customers. Well, you need to close the loop with the customers who've responded so that they know that you're listening and their opinions aren't going into a black hole. Otherwise, they're not going to respond to you in the future. And then, you have to have a strategy for dealing with customers that haven't responded. So Daryl, yet another another question that dovetails nicely into this. Daryl asks, how do you handle customers who are complacent and without any objections? Since Alex mentioned it's scary if they start to ghost you or not responding, I'd like to know on how you can handle that. And an NPS survey is a perfect example of, if they consistently don't respond, is that a problem? Is that a red flag?
Yeah, I think it is. I I've had more clients than I probably want to admit to the ghosting scenario, but it's an opportunity to learn and grow as a CSM. Listen, I think depending on what your industry is, if you're pigeonholing yourself into only having one or two points of contact in a business, you're setting yourself up at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
If you are getting ghosted by two people, I guarantee you they probably have a VP or somebody in the C-suite that is more than interested in hearing the stories of complacency and lack of effort. While it's never my intention, or should it be, to tattletale or anything like that, if you position it into like, hey, over the last 4 months, we've tried to explore different ways to expand your business through X, Y, and Z. I'm not getting a lot of response or feedback. Should I redirect my efforts to a different channel or to a different avenue? If one thing that I like to do too is, does my C-suite have any connections on LinkedIn at that business? Because if they do, I can just do a draft on behalf of my CEO, and they can just connect with their CEO of that business and say, hey, let's all hop on a call and see how we can improve your business. So there's a few avenues to get away from the getting ghosted part. I think the first thing is understanding that you have to have more than one channel of communication in the business. Otherwise you're kind of up against it.
100% agree with you. Marta, you mentioned the power user. You survey your power users maybe in app, but you send an email out to your executive sponsor, to your and it's so important to not only have get a gauge on what your relationship is with those different user types, with those different stakeholder types, but also if you only have one contact at a company, you as a CSM are not doing your job. You need to be looking for lots of different, you need to be connecting with lots of different people, whether it's somebody who holds a purse strings, or it's a power user, or it's just an individual user that you've reached out to, because at some point, those people are going to be become really valuable to you, especially in a ghosting situation. Because to your point, Alex, if your power user is ghosting you and your executive sponsor is ghosting you, but you've done your job and have mapped out a few other users, you could reach out to them, via LinkedIn or on Messenger or something, and say, hey, I'm having a hard time getting in touch with Joe and Kim. Is there a problem? Mm-hmm. Right? And use that connection with that person to help do some G2 for you.
One thing I'd like to add in here is that, once again, it depends on your industry, but in the world that I'm living in, it's about the expectation setting at onboarding. We're doing extensive work from a CS standpoint and how we set milestones. So we're setting communication patterns in the beginning of, okay, we're going to have these points where we come in with this data. So it's not a check-in. It's a value-added conversation of, here's our data, here's the things that we're going to review, here's the email communication cadence you should expect from me. And this is something that we're continuously investing in, because the onboarding is really important and adoption is everything. So basically, if my product is in a closet or doesn't get used, it obviously would mean that most likely that client would churn. So we got to make sure that the hardware and the software elements are being utilized, and we're tracking that on pretty much a daily basis to really support our customer success. But that buy-in in the beginning of what the partnered approach for communications is really important, because then when you do escalate a bit or elevate it to other people, then it's not a surprise to them that, oh, they were supposed to be hitting these, project goals.
Got it. Great thought. All right, here's another question from Amita. How are you, and this is a little, I guess it's definitely, it's relevant for this particular conversation actually at this time. How are you proactively reaching out to clients that are coming up for renewal given this difficult financial time, and how do you handle those objections, if any, early on? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Any suggestions?
I wish we had a couple of our renewals managers on here, because they are total badasses when it comes to this. They've handled a lot of the challenges for so many of our clients that are dealing with COVID and renewals and everything else. I think one really important factor when it comes to the renewal process is making sure that this isn't a last minute play, like, or a reminder, right? Here's 48 hours before that 30-day out clause. Let me know, right? Like, I think you have to have them on some sort of cadence prior to that, where 90 days, 60 days, 30-day reminder, and then a couple days before. again, like this, you got to have empathy. Like this is a really, really tough situation for a lot of companies and a lot of businesses, and people are getting laid off and furloughed, and it's tough. So having that empathy is important, but I also think not giving the client 48 hours notice that, hey, in a couple of days you're going to be up for renewal. Good luck, right? Like I think it's a terrible play. So we do a pretty good job of at least giving them a quarter ahead of time prior to renewal, and then subsequent touch points until the renewal date.
I also think you need to think about what are the things that we can do. What can we offer? Have a step down approach that, okay, I can, the first offer is going to be, improved payment terms. The second offer is going to be improved payment terms and a discount. Maybe the third offer, if I have multiple products in a product suite, if you renew at the current level, I'm going to give you access to all of my products for the next year. And you really want to sit down and think through that as a team, as a group, with your CFO, with your folks in finance and your sales folks, and lay out what is do your homework, right? And have a step down approach, with the last thing actually being on that list, a churn, right? But have some options prepared, and do your homework on your customers. Mm-hmm. Do your homework and come up with a hypothesis of where you think that customer's business is at, and what kind of objections you might face going into it.
I like that collective effort of C-suite engaged with customer success on this, because that's exactly what we had to do. We have hotels that are completely shuttered. We have office buildings that are completely closed. So how are our clients impacted by COVID directly? And then what's the plan from there that gets them through this period and keeps us as a partner to them?
It's all about, what is the value that you bring to that business as a whole, and how can that be quantified? I completely agree with you, Andrew, in terms of the step down approach. Always having a fallback position, with the very last resort being a churn. That's really, really helpful. Knowing that and having that empathy also goes a really long way, and understanding that their company might not be in the position that they were 4 months ago, or, at the beginning of the relationship when you came up with the success plan and what the next steps were going to be.
We've only got a few minutes left. So I want to run through, try and get another question or two in here really quick. Emma, again, asks, have you ever made the decision to walk away from a customer because you realize that the relationship cannot be salvaged? If so, how did you manage that? I have, but I'm hoping that one of you have had to do that, so you can talk.
Yeah.
I haven't been in the room when it happened, but I know in the past we have made a business decision for a client of mine in the past. I think fundamentally it came down to what is the cost input that we're putting in for this client versus what we're getting in return from them, in the sense that, they have record-breaking number of support tickets. They don't implement the advice that we give. They're not willing to let us go on site for any kind of hand-holding. They won't accept pro serve hours, right? Like when you've done everything, including the Hail Mary, and you just want to keep bringing up problems. I think that is the opportunity, or the moment where you have to evaluate as a business, does it make sense to invest this much into something that isn't being reciprocated at all? Haven't been in the room when the decision was made, can't articulate how it was positioned, but no, it's definitely happened. Yeah.
Well, and it should be something that you're reporting and examining across time. So it shouldn't be something that's a surprise to your company. So the more that you have the tools in place to track people's adoption, behavior, onboarding success, all of those metrics, the NPS, of course, oftentimes your company should be aware of the things that are at risk with a client. Additionally, you as a CSM, having that partnered relationship where you're both recognizing things, not that this is always the case, but The ones that I've seen is that we're both coming to the terms of potentially parting. So it's a discussion that we're both seeing things at risk and we're trying to resolve together.
Yeah, I think the first step and the most important step, just like in any 12-step program, is recognizing that there's a problem. Mm-hmm. And I myself been in situations where, well, on the post-sale side, we recognized there was a problem, but nobody else wanted to talk about it, right? So at least having that discussion, and you know what, you may decide, hey, it's not worth us divorcing because there's all of these other things, that are good about having this customer, even though they're limping along and we're having challenges with them. Their logo is impressive, or they are in a vertical that we want to get into, so we want to learn from the challenges, or there may be other reasons why, and that's also why you need to convene a discussion with your sales team, with your marketing team, and with your leaders. But the key is having that open discussion and being transparent about it. Because there is an opportunity cost when you are sinking so much time and effort into a customer that just doesn't seem like they want to help themselves. So I think we got time for one more question. Let's see here. So Ashley asks, I believe I heard you say breaking the solution into more manageable pieces keeps momentum and encourages the customer as they see you successfully delivering over time. How might you frame your thinking around breaking the solution down? Can you give an example of this in practice? Anybody want to take this? We've got like 2 minutes left.
I can take this really quick.
Okay.
I think just identifying what are the quick wins that someone can, I call it low-hanging fruit. So understanding that the ultimate solution that they want may be 6, 12 months down the line, but what are things that I can do for you today? What are things that I can do for you this month? And just framing it around there, making sure I want you to look good to your boss. I want to make sure that you're getting what you need out of this. And the full-blown solution will be some time away, but I can help you right now if we come up with a workaround in the meantime, or anything like that. So framing it around that way, I think is really helpful.
I love the framing around the person, the ego card, right? And if anything, even if you're having a challenge, if you frame it that way and you frame it as I want to help you look like the smartest person for not only bringing us in there but keeping us in there. Not only does that person perk up and they're more receptive, but you continue to build that trusted advisor relationship, which is what we ultimately all want to have. So we're at the end of our hour. I want to thank our guests for joining me today. One final note: great CSMs know they don't have all the answers, but they know where to get them. That's why we created CSM Mastermind, to harness the knowledge and experience of the community to help improve everyone. So I hope that you got something out of this discussion, and we'll see you at our next event on May 13th. Check out our website to find out more about that and our success coaching programs, and signed up. I hope that you all have a great rest of your day and week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and good day to you all. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.